different things.
Hi, I'm Dino Juice,
Hi, I'm Sal Cosenza.
and welcome to Abstract Essay. Abstract Essay created to empower artists like us. How are you, Mr. Sal?
I'm doing well, Daniel. How about yourself?
I'm fabulous like you. So another week, another episode of Abstract Essay.
Yes, indeed.
Do
Did
you
you
have
have a
something?
creative? Did you have a
Yes,
creative week?
I think yes. I have
Yeah.
a creative week this week because I did what? Something good.
What was the best food item you tasted this week?
This week I did a panna cotta for dessert. So,
Oh,
mamma
oh my,
mia.
yeah. My heart's palpitating as you describe it. My
Yes,
cholesterol has risen 2 points. I
2.0.
have high cholesterol, by the way.
Oh, yes.
I have
Okay.
too much mozzarella.
Do you love panna cotta? Or which do you
I
prefer, panna cotta or tiramisu?
Oh my gosh. It's like saying, do I want my index finger or my pinky finger for the rest of my life?
Yes. There.
Um, I'm a tiramisu person though. I think
Mhm.
if it boils down to it, you know, certain desserts depress me, but that's a whole other story. I don't know, like cake. I'm not big on cake, but I like
Mhm.
tiramisu because it's got, it's soaked in what's the lick? It's in like a rum or
Liquor,
something.
yes,
Yeah,
rum.
and
Chef,
coffee rub and
yes, Chef Alessandro can make different kinds of flavor of tiramisu. You can do vodka, you can beer, you can, what else do you
oh my
want
God.
to? Yes, liquor, coffee, vanilla, anything under the sun. We can do, uh, create flavor for tiramisu as well as panna cotta too, if you want.
Okay. Nothing like a good tiramisu and nothing like a great cannoli. Oh my gosh.
Cannoli. Oh,
Which, yeah.
so
But
speaking,
anyway,
yes, speaking of food, I just want to please do listen to my other podcast in its fifth season, people. Fifth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. And please do listen to our latest episode. We are reading our letter senders all over the world. So, Mr. Sal, what would be our topic for today?
okay, so the saga continues with the
Yes,
domestic
Saga.
New York
Yes.
collection.
Can I give a drum roll?
You want to do the drum roll? Yes. And let me see if I can time it. I,
Oh, one more.
I, I never do. No? Yes?
Yes.
I don't know. Right.
Yes.
Plus, there's a delay.
Well,
I'm currently on Antarctica, so there's a bit of a delay. I'm joking, I'm not on Antarctica. Okay,
Arizona.
let's get into it. So, for we left off in sort of the sophomore period of this domestic New York collection of mine, which, as a reminder, it's 57 different painting installments. I started it in 2006, and my last one was created in 2019. Um, and so now we're sort of in the 2010, 20, I'll do 2010 to 2012. And I sort of started 2010 off with a very ambitious bang, if you will. I actually remember painting this over when I was in school at the time. It was over like a Christmas break. And so what we're looking at here is domestic New York, the life cycle from 2010. So this is a triptych. It's the only triptych in the entire domestic New York series. Um, there's a reason why it's the only one. I think it was a bit too ambitious, I think, for me at the time. Um, Strangely, even though I enjoy it, I like the result. It was only one of two that did not find an owner. So I still have this one. Um, but it's kind of nice to see it, to like walk by it every so often. Anyway, so it's constructed into three parts, being a triptych, right? So the first painting, and it's also we might have to shield our eyes, Daniel. Some of the kids who are watching, no, but it's showing. I sort of turned this idea of a building construction into the life cycle, right?
Yes.
So you have the first piece is called planning,
Yes.
and they're planning something, right? The
Reproduction.
second, yes, the second one is called construction, and so this is showing, sort of from the baby's vantage point, and you see, the father, Empire State Building, looking on behind the doctor. And then the third piece is called dedication. And so planning, construction, dedication, those are real things that happen, right? In any building that's built, it has those particular phases. You plan the design, you build the design, and then you sort of, there's the ribbon cutting. So I turned planning into, yes, reproduction. I turned construction into sort of the birth of the new baby building. And then I
Yes.
turned dedication into sort of like a family photo. Now, the building that I chose, if I could zoom in here, the building I chose to sort of be I'm thinking, what would a building look like if its parents were the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building? And surprisingly, I picked a building in Philadelphia called One Liberty Place. And if you look it up, it's sort of like a postmodern version of the Chrysler Building, especially, but it looks as if it would be, you know, a child of these two parents, which is crazy, but whatever, right? So
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting for me, Mr. Sal.
So the third one is sort of like a Polaroid photo, right? I gave it this white border. I tilted it. I remember my dad helped me sort of put this thing together, screw it all together. So each, the canvases are not moving. It's not going anywhere. It reads as one giant sort of block of a painting. But each piece, has its own different dimensions. But so there you go. Domestic New York, the life cycle, starting off 2010 with a bang in a couple of different ways. Uh-oh, sensors. Okay, let's go to the next one. So
Sensor.
then, yeah, so what I did later on, or in 2010, was the first time as like a young adult that I went back to New York City, and so I took a ton of photos. I wandered New York for like a month, and so I found, I took photos of the Empire Diner, which is still there. It's in the Chelsea area. I took other photos, and then I turned those into domestic New York paintings. So the first one to come up from that exploration was domestic New York. Meet me at the diner 10 sharp, and it's a 16-inch by 20-inch piece, 2010. I was, I am and was at the time influenced by Georgia O'Keeffe, who's a iconic painter.
Yes.
And in the 1920s, she had painted a series of really amazing skyscraper paintings of including, the Radiator Building in New York. So this is when she lived in New York. That's all she painted before she moved out to New Mexico and later in her career and started painting, animal skulls and orchids and different flower petals and such. So she had a really interesting career pivot. But so this sort of pays homage to the Georgia O'Keeffe cityscape style. So some of the lights found in the backdrop on the buildings and also these street lights with the circles around them were an homage to Georgia. Um, and I wanted to make these black and white. So this is kind of the start of this sort of little film noir exploration that some of the paintings in this series get into, right? So this would be the first that does so. But here you have Chrysler and Empire sort of sitting in this, lowly looking diner, Art Deco inspired diner. Um, Okay, so then another photo I took was this back wall here of this next painting. This graffiti laden wall right underneath um, the High Line in New York City. So this painting's called Domestic New York. What's a pretty building like you doing in a place like this? And so here we have Chrysler Building pushing a stroller, and if you could see just in the bottom right corner is that One Liberty Place baby. So there's some storyline continuity, um, between the domestic New York life cycle and now here's the baby sort of returning to the story. Um, Here you have sort of a vagabond sitting and sort of harassing Chrysler Building. So she's strolling through this very sort of sketchy area. But I love the graffiti. A lot of this was taken directly from the photo, and then I incorporated some more in there. But this is one of the few times I had the chance to paint graffiti. I love street art and tagging and graffiti. Some of it could be really beautifully done. Um, okay, so that's that one. Here we get back into film noir territory, so I'm going black and white again. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, when I remember vividly walking the sort of East River um, in Manhattan, and then I was underneath this bridge. This is the Manhattan Bridge, which is nearby the Brooklyn Bridge, um, just um, just north of it. So I took that shot and then I sort of replicated it in this painting. This one's called Domestic New York Bandits and Briefcases. And again, the titles also are very film noir, right? Like something out of a 1940s, you know, movie with who's a famous, um, oh my
King Kong.
gosh, well, King Kong. Yeah, he was. You're right. He was a celebrity.
Yes.
I'm thinking of Casablanca, the actor.
Casablanca,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, who's the actor in Casablanca? Oh
Oh,
my goodness,
me
I'm
too,
ashamed
sorry.
of myself.
The old one. Let's
The
see.
original Casablanca with not Cla
Casablanca.
not Clark Gable. Oh my goodness. Wow. All right. Just
Oh,
delete this part of the recording. Anyway,
Casablanca is American
it's
1942 American films by
yeah.
Michael Curtis.
I,
Julius Ice Cream. The actor. Yeah, what are the
I
actor?
have to look at
Humphrey Bogart.
Humphrey Bogart. Oh my gosh.
Yes,
Okay.
Ingrid Bergman.
And Bergman. I
Yes,
apologize to all film
critics.
fans out there. Yes. Humphrey Bogart. So Domestic New York Bandits and Briefcases is showing a sort of, something's going on, right? And
Mhm.
here's a sort of mafiosi looking dude, and he's got, a device in his hand, and here's Empire State Building with a fedora, and another building behind with another device in the building's windows, right, pointing. So here's a vintage Buick. So this one I remember I was really into when I was painting it. And then I even added little, you know how when you watch an old movie, the film quality is grainy and sometimes you'll see like a hair on the film or a stain, it's not fully
Yes.
restored. So I wanted to incorporate some of that into this painting to give it that film-like quality. So this one's Bandits and Briefcases from 2010. I follow that one up with Domestic New York, Bullets and Broads. Here's another sort of vintage 1940s era title. Um, I remember taking this photo underneath Central Park's right by the fountain. It's called Bethesda Fountain in Central Park, which is an iconic uh, part of the park. And underneath is this really amazing space that leads you from the landscaping to the fountain itself. So I was really in love with these columns and this ceiling, and so I used that as my sort of shot for this. But here you have Empire State Building, again with a device. I'm not going to say the word because I don't want us
A
to get
device.
shut down. But a fedora right on top of Empire's antenna, I guess. And then here you have, a villain of some kind holding Chrysler Building hostage, or so there's like a chase sequence going on, and then I have these sort of these imperfections going on again, like this streakiness, and all this stuff is intentional. It's meant to look like an old piece of film, right? Um, so that one's called Bullets and Broads. All right, and then I took a little bit of a break in terms of theme and tone with this next one. The holidays were fast approaching in 2010, and like any, again, this series sort of is, I always imagined it as like a sitcom. So a lot of sitcoms have like the holiday special, right? That sort of Christmas episode or whatever. So I wanted to create a sort of Christmas themed domestic New York painting. I sort of differentiate the title by just calling it A Domestic New York Christmas, as opposed to, Domestic New York, a Christmas Eve or something. So it's called A Domestic New York Christmas from 2010. Um, this one was quite popular at the time, as you can imagine. And to this day, I sort of I'll send out postcards with it, e-cards. It seems to be sort of
Good.
like one of the
Nice.
favorites. Yeah. And then so within it are sort of sentimental elements from my childhood, celebrating Christmas, right? So I remember this nativity on the left was like a family nativity. It was, I think, originally made in New York, and over the years, the family members have like restored it, decorated it. Some of the ornaments on the tree are actual ornaments that I remember having. One of them is our family dog, Bobo, who's rest in peace, right? And so there's a lot of personal little elements in here. Of course, I have a, Jolly Christmas from Frank Sinatra record playing, right? And here's the record player. Here's a snowy window on the left, frosted window pane. Here's the building growing up, right? So One Liberty Place is opening up uh, a nighttime Christmas Eve gift. And now they have a dog too, the family. So the domestic New York, the family is growing, right? Empire and Chrysler are sharing a hot cocoa, right? So it's very, very holiday, right? Very sentimental. Um, so that one was fun to make. And then I got right back into black and white. So here we are in 2011. This one is called Domestic New York, the Main Event. and
Wow.
and this is a boxing themed painting. I based the pose of the Empire State and the pose of the building below on the who'd just been knocked down on this famous Muhammad Ali photograph from, I think, Life magazine. So back in the day, there was this really famous shot of Ali like standing over his opponent after having just knocked him down. And so the opponent in this case is the Burj Khalifa, which is still the tallest building in the world.
Yes.
And I guess around 2011, it was probably just completed. And I wanted to, sort of say that, well, Empire State Building might be a lot shorter, but he's still got it. So it was sort of a comment about
Still
Empire State
famous.
Building, in my opinion, being like
The
being
most
my
famous.
yeah, something like that. Um, it's very, very it has my opinion all over it, but that's art. But anyway, so in the audience, I've got St. Patrick's Cathedral again watching. I've got Chrysler Building watching from behind the ring. I even have a cameo by Frank Sinatra holding a Nikon camera because um, there was a particular Ali Frazier fight. Again, it was a Life magazine thing, but Frank Sinatra was a big boxing fan, and he took the photos of the fight, he documented it, and then he sent those photos to Life magazine. And so, nobody knows this, right? But I wanted
Share the
to,
trivia.
yeah, I wanted to include that. So here's my little Frank Sinatra cameo. He pops in every so often in this series, right? And here he is holding the camera. Behind him is the Woolworth building. And then right here with the ABC microphone is the sportscaster Howard Cosell, who older audiences might remember that name, but he had a very distinct presence at any sort of sporting event. He was like the sort of Bob Costas. Um, I think only really Bob Costas could match him because Bob Costas today is like everywhere, every event. Um, there's probably others, but anyway, so there's a Cosell cameo, there's a Sinatra cameo, and then the buildings. And then the only thing in red um, are the two gloves, Empire State's two boxing gloves. So I thought this one was interesting to create. Oh, and speaking of another Frankie one, this one's called, I follow this one up with Domestic New York, all dressed up with no place to go. And this one is based on a particular Sinatra album called No One Cares. That was the name of the album. Um,
No one cares.
which, feel free to say to me anytime, Daniel. No, I'm just, uh, but this one, there's it's a classic album cover. Sinatra's wearing a raincoat. He's got the fedora. He's got the cigarette. He did a lot of saloon song albums, torch songs. But what I did in this case was I put Sinatra in there, and he's sort of glancing over at Chrysler Building, who's sort of walking up with, again, a cigarette in the mouth. Um, behind the two, they look like they're about to engage in some sort of discussion. But behind them are a bunch of smiling figures and faces and buildings, all sort of, separate from what's going on in the foreground, right? So I
Yes.
thought this one was kind of a treat to paint. Um, this next one from 2011 is called Domestic New York, You, Me, and the Sea.
Yes.
And it was a very horizontal piece, very landscape, 16 inch by 40 inch in dimension. And this one, I think, stems from my love of bossa nova music. Um, like people like Antonio Carlos Jobim, Alice Regina, um, I think, to a degree, Sergio Mendes. I love bossa nova in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to sort of capture that feeling in a painting using the two characters. So this is Empire State and Chrysler, sort of, engaged in a little beach time romance, right? Um, okay, let's go to the next one.
Awesome.
So here we go. This one is also from 2011. I think this is, yeah, that was a busy year for this series, but I like the Beatles a lot. I
Yes.
love I love Paul McCartney, and I like Wings, and he had a band after the Beatles called Wings, and probably their most iconic album is Band on the Run, which has, Band on the Run, it has Jet, it has a lot of really famous 1973 classic rock songs. And the album cover is iconic. The original album cover has um, Paul McCartney, Linda McCartney, Denny Lane. Those were the three core Wings members. And it's got celebrities in it like Christopher Lee and others. So I essentially replicated that album cover using the same fonts, um, but I changed it obviously to Buildings on the Run, and I replaced every character with a famous New York building. and One Liberty Place, right? So um, instead of Paul McCartney, you have Empire State Building. Instead of Linda McCartney, you have the Chrysler Building, and surrounding them you have um, Seagram Building, Con Edison Tower, Rockefeller Center, St. Patrick's Cathedral, City Court Building, and the MetLife Building. And then the building in the foreground is the One Liberty Place, which is their, their child, right? Um, so I thought this one was really fun to paint. So that's
Mm,
Buildings on the Run. And
classic.
yeah, and it's a square shaped piece. It's 20 inch by 20 inch, because I wanted to be faithful to sort of a record cover and or an album cover, right? How they're square. Um, all right. And then I close out 2011 with another holiday piece because I closed out
Nice.
2010 with the Domestic New York Christmas. So this one's called Domestic New York, A Chance of Snow. I had fun painting snow with this, I remember. Um, and here you have Chrysler Building and Empire State Building just, freshly chopping a Christmas tree down, or chopping a fresh Christmas tree down, I should say.
Yes.
Here you have Chrysler with the saw. They're sort of carting the tree back to their little cabin here. Sort of ahead of them is One Liberty Place, somehow throwing a frisbee. And here's that family dog from the first Christmas painting from a year ago, going after it. So there's a sense of continuity here. And to do the trees, I remember painting these trees. I never did this, but I started looking at Bob Ross videos, and everyone loves Bob Ross, right?
Yes.
And his method for painting uh, pine trees is never going to be um, improved. I think he really had it down. So I took a lesson from Bob Ross, and I actually incorporated his technique into this painting to create the trunks, the stems, and the leaves of the tree. But it's a very sort of wintry scene, right? Everything about it. This is Domestic New York, A Chance of Snow. Okay, and then I'll show just a couple from 2012. There's a lot more from that year, which we can talk about in a later episode. But here's one called from early 2012, Domestic New York, The Empire Hotel. And so this one is based on my love of Alfred Hitchcock movies. And
Mm.
so they're one of my favorite movies of all time, and certainly my favorite Hitchcock movie is Vertigo from 1958 with Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak. It's just a beautifully shot film. Like every frame is just a work of art, in my opinion. There's a strong sense of color on every scene, found on every scene. And there's a portion of the film set in this hotel in San Francisco called the Empire Hotel, which is where I got the name of this painting from. And so there's this neon sign out on the window that just shines this brilliant neon green hue into the space. So this is my sort of homage to that particular room uh, in the movie. And so in this case, I have Chrysler and Empire sort of in this dreamlike state because that movie is all about dreams and imagining things and reconstructing things and obsession. That I recommend watching Vertigo for anyone. um, so here you have, I'm thinking to myself, what would the Chrysler building dream about, and likewise what would Empire State Building dream about? And so here you have Chrysler sort of dreaming of, just sort of riding the Pacific Coast Highway or something. Naturally, she would ride in a Chrysler car. So I forgot, I don't remember which car I based this red one on, um, but I'm sure it was a vintage Chrysler car. Um, I know it was a Chrysler, I just don't know, I can't
Vintage.
remember. Yes. And then on the right, what would Empire State be thinking about? And for some reason, he's thinking about falling off of the Empire State Building. So the empire is falling off the empire. I don't know why, but this is what they're thinking about. This is what they're dreaming about, Daniel.
That's what they're
Um,
doing. Yes.
who am I to get in their way? Um,
Yes.
okay, and then this will be the closing one for today. So this one's called Domestic New York in VistaVision. This is sort of another Alfred Hitchcock influenced painting. I sort of did, back to back. So there's a lot going on in this piece. Um, First of all, the title in VistaVision is a reference to uh, many of the great Alfred Hitchcock movies. He used VistaVision as his sort of panoramic, his camera, or I don't know film too well, like the technique of it, but the terms too well. But anytime you saw a Hitchcock movie, it usually said in VistaVision, and it was very bold. And I just loved that. I don't know why. So I gave it this widescreen format. So on the painting, I have two very deliberate black bands, one on the top, one on the bottom, and that's just to sort of reference the fact that this is a widescreen sort of VistaVision type of film, right? And even my signature, I boxed it in to sort of look like Turner Classic Movies, so TCM. At the time, they used to have their logo with the box around it. So I wanted to give the illusion that you're watching it on TCM or something. So, but what's going on in the painting? You have again, I just came back from New York, so I had all these photos. One of them was of Nathan's Hot Dogs in Coney Island, which is another place I recommend everybody needs to go to at least once for your
Life.
meat in tube form needs. So, here's a shot of Nathan's on the left, but it's using the vintage Nathans from like the 1960s. So it's using the signage from that era of Nathans. Um, but naturally, eating a hot dog in the bottom left corner is Alfred Hitchcock himself, who was known to have cameos in his own movies, right? He would pop in every so often. Um, the shot, so the camera angle is of Empire State Building being chased by, we don't know who these people are, but he's just being chased in the middle of, Surf and Stillwell Avenue in Brooklyn, which is where Nathan's is. But the angle is based on a very Hitchcock signature angle, signature shot, where he would put the camera low, like belt
Hmm.
high, and then look up towards the character to convey a certain mood. And so I tried to replicate that here. I have the camera sort of panning upwards. It's not like a flat shot, right? And the perspective in the back is all sort of one point perspective to emphasize that even further. Um, so yeah, and again, here's black and white, right? It's meant to evoke sort of film noir, but also it's a tribute to Hitchcock films. The background characters are, I think, pretty varied and interesting. You've got like a couple of nuns here. You have again the gangsters, whoever these are. It's a mix of buildings and people, sort of chasing Empire State, who's wearing a tie and a fedora. Over here is a very sort of posh building. Um, and then you have, again, Hitchcock in the background. Um, yeah, I think that's it. I think for the next one, we'll get into
Egypt.
this mini series. Yeah, so we'll go to Egypt. So what I wound up doing
Okay.
after this was I had a series of sort of travel ones, where the two buildings, they go to different parts of the world. But we'll close for now with InvistaVision. This was a very experimental chapter, I think, in the domestic New York lifespan, right? I sort of played with a lot of different themes. Um, but I don't know. What do you think? Did I really go overboard this time? I think I did.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sal, for sharing your paintings to the world. So to wrap up our discussion for today, how do you balance the harmony in all your compositions?
Hmm. I look for asymmetry. I I rarely have something that's like dead center of the frame, and I think that that gives it a certain harmony. I think it gives it a natural, more natural appearance. I don't know much about photography, but I know that unless you're trying to do it on purpose, you should never capture the subject in the middle of the frame. It should always be off to one of, like if you had an imaginary grid, it would be in one of the intersection points and not in the center. So a lot of my paintings are asymmetrical for that reason.
I think so. And thank you so much again
Yeah.
for sharing your talents to the world.
Thank you,
And
Daniel.
would you like to plug something?
Uh, I don't know. Check on my website if you feel so inclined. I'm getting a lot of interesting visits from Germany. I noticed this week. Of course, like parts of the East Coast, which is always great. Um, but yeah, just keep creating, everyone. I urge
Yeah.
you to experiment and start something new.
And share to the world. Stop
Uh,
procrastinating, people, if you have that
yeah,
passion to paint, 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 and share to the world like Mr. Sal Cosenza. Another great topic and a magnificent paintings of Mr. Sal. So,
I
Mr.
appreciate
Sal,
it.
thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. See you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.